and strengthen ourselves in the special mitzvahs of the women, Kashrus, Shabbos, and Taras Mishpacha, as well as other mitzvahs pertinent to us as women. And our goal is to prepare ourselves and our homes to welcome Mashiach. Tonight's class is dedicated to Ilui Nishmas Harav Yitzchak ben Rabbi Eliezer Tzvi Zev Alav Shalom. His neshama should have an aliyah. If you would like to dedicate a class in honor of someone or in support of someone, you could reach out to us via email, projectchanapowerhour@gmail.com. Please join us afterwards for Tzedakah Tehillim and a Mashiach thought. So we're going to get right into it. For our first class in Kashrus, we'll be continuing on our topic of eating out without a doubt. Part 8. In this series, we will explore how to maintain our kashrus standards while eating out at restaurants, simchas, or on vacation. We are very grateful to have back with us Rabbi N and Zibell. Rabbi Zibell is the kashrus administrator at the RCF, the Rabbinate of Central Florida, and delivers classes to the general public on various kashrus topics. He is also highly active in answering consumers' kashrus questions on a daily basis. Rabbi Zibell is known for his practical grasp and application of kashrus knowledge, as well as his clear way of explaining halachic matters. Thank you so much for being part of our program tonight.
It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me. So we're just going to recap. First of all, the past few weeks we've been discussing various things that possibly could go wrong or possibly cannot be up to someone's standards, and we went into many details. We're going to continue with a bit more of that, but before that, I just want to clarify something. A few people reached out in various ways and asked. It seems from all these classes that it's not realistic to eat out. There's so many questions, so many doubts. How could one even begin to fathom going out? It seems like it's endless, the amount of concerns and the list of questions, and it's making it not realistic. Is there something realistic to eat out? So in truth, I wanted to just touch back on that and maybe make that very clear, how to break that down, when questions need to be asked, when questions don't need to be asked, and like that we can get a clarity on that. So I think we'll break it down to 5 things which we want to discuss. First of all, the first thing you want to make sure is that there is a reliable hashgacha, which we already discussed at length. What is a reliable hashgacha and how to find out reliable hashgacha. Once you know that's in place, the next question is this a heimish hashgacha or a national hashgacha? What's the difference? A heimish hashgacha is hashgacha which is attempting to get the highest possible standard, catering to either Chassidic community or Haredi, very religious community that's always trying to do everything to the highest level, the most mohidic level. So the heimish hashgachas will be gearing towards that crowd, and therefore generally will only be accepting products that don't have any of the questions that we discussed in the past few classes. The products that they're accepting is going to be things that have none of those questions. So the moment you know you're dealing with a reliable hashgacha, and the hashgacha is a heimish hashgacha, a good heimish hashgacha, they're catering to a crowd that wants only the highest standard. Most of those questions are not even existent because they wouldn't accept such a product in their facility. Now, besides that, you also want to make sure that you have a mashgiach which is adequate, because at times, even with a good hashgacha, even a heimish hashgacha, sometimes, for whatever reason, it may be a substitute, it may have fallen through the cracks, he may have slacked off, the mashgiach may not be on top of his game. And that's where we had all the different questions to ask a mashgiach, and even basic questions like, what shchita is it? What products? Is it sharabar, or is it, he's from Uruguay, is it CHK, or is it a different hashgacha? Just giving basics, you could see if the mashgiach is on top of his game and he knows. And that already, the fact that you know it's a heimish hashgacha and a reliable hashgacha and there's a good mashgiach, just asking 1 or 2 questions to see that the mashgiach knows what's happening would already be enough really to eat there. Obviously, the first thing you want to make sure there's no obvious red flags, which we'll discuss in a moment what it means, obvious red flags. And best is even if you know that the place is owned by a firm erlichiyah, that makes that, if you have all those 5 things line up, you don't have to ask any questions except for very basic, just to ask to see if the mashgiach is really involved. So in such a case, you wouldn't have to ask. But what we are, many times we're faced with hashgachas which are called national hashgachas, hashgachas which are not catering specifically to people who are trying to keep the highest level of kashrus, but people that are trying to keep average or even basic. And hashgachas like the OU, or the Chavke, or even the OK in some areas, and so on and so forth, or when you go into out-of-town local vadim. So those, they're not looking only to cater to people that are keeping the high standard. They're trying to keep an average standard, and therefore they will apply many kulas to many leniencies, even if they're going to call themselves Chalav Yisrael and Pas Yisrael. They're going to be again those things which we mentioned that may not be so clear, and many products coming in will not be to the highest standard. So that's where more questions will come up when you're dealing with hashgacha, which is not Hamish hashgacha, but which is a national hashgacha, and that's where yes, more questions will come up. And when you may not feel comfortable with the mashgiach, and you want to eat something, you may have to start asking him a few questions about how he washes things. If he seems very fresh or very new, or he seems like a substitute or young, you may want to start asking a few more questions: how he was trained, or what kind of training went through. So obviously you have to use your common sense when to ask questions and when not to when it comes to a mashgiach. But that was just to recap that. So yeah, there could be many places to eat at, and just when it's by certain hashgachas, you just need to ask more questions. Now we'll continue on back to a few more things, which again are someone who wants to keep the highest standard would generally be avoiding such products. And when they're going into an establishment that doesn't have the hashgacha that's keeping everything to the highest standard, may want to inquire about these few more things which we're going to discuss today. So one thing which is commonly used, and a very common ingredient, is called tartaric acid. It comes from cream of tartar, and that cream of tartar is a byproduct of wine production. After the wine is taken out of the wine barrel, there's this type of crystallization, and that crystallization has a certain acidic aspect to it, and also has many chemical aspects to it. And it's very commonly used in many, many things, whether it's sodas, whether it's candies, whether it's baked goods. It's very commonly found in baking powder. And this could be used in many, many things. And most hashgachas out there, non-Haimish hashgachas, will accept this product coming from treif wine production, non-kosher wine production. They rely on various heterim, that it's dried out, that the crystals are dried out, and it's a big discussion if you need to wait 12 months for the dry out, or could you excel the process and dry it out in the oven, and all that is a big discussion amongst poskim. But the hashgachas out there generally take a more lenient approach. So a Haimish hashgacha, or someone trying to give a higher standard, would want to avoid products with tartaric acid. And they would first need to speak to their Rav to find out what they should be keeping in their personal home, and also find out if that should be something they should be careful with when they're going out, and if it is, there's many, many things that could have it, and many times the mashgiach won't even know what you're asking because they won't even be aware of this idea. But just putting it out there that when you be eating out somewhere which is not going to be a Haimish hashgacha, that's something that can come up. And if you really want to be careful and comfortable, you may want to be asking a few more questions about that. Another example is grapeseed oil. Grape seeds, the way they come as well, they come after the process of making wine, after the grapes are squeezed. The seeds are extracted, and then they're dried, and they squeeze them for their oil. Halachically, the moment the grapes are squeezed, the seeds become usur, and we're dealing with all the grape seeds out there come from non-kosher production of wine, so they become usur. And the question is, if drying them out for 12 months is enough. I mean, drying them out for 12 months is enough. The question is, if you're drying them out less than 12 months in an oven, if that is enough. And some take the approach that it is enough, and therefore almost all grapeseed oil out there is not mahoder because they're taking a more lenient approach. So that could just be a simple question: is there grapeseed oil being used? Again, someone should ask their Rav what they should be doing at home, and if this is something they should be careful with going out. But if it is, it's something that could be very commonly used, and could be a valid question to ask to make sure that it's up to your standard. And one more thing to mention is, at times, hashgacha may have a Chassidish Rav, or may have a Lubavitcher Rav with his name on it. But due to the circumstance of the city where he finds himself, or what's accessible, they may not automatically mean that this is a Haimish hashgacha and that everything is up to the highest possible standard. It may mean that it's Pas Yisrael, but they may be using many other products that are not to the highest standard. So just because you do see a name which may seem like, okay, this for sure is a Chizur Rav or it's a Lubavitcher Rav, I'm sure everything there is going to be to the highest standard. Don't assume that, because many times it's not the case. It could be they're in an area where it's hard to access these Mehuder products, the Mehuder products, and so on and so forth. So you still need to ask, and you could call the Rav himself if you plan accordingly and ask to what standard is everything coming in, including whatever, all the products, is everything to the highest standard with a good Hamish Hashgacha, or are things on a more of a national Hashgacha standard, more like an OU or the OK or so on and so forth. So now we'll discuss, we mentioned briefly red flags, and in the past we did bring up some red flags that can be obvious, whether it's from the mashgiach or not. We're just going to quickly go through a list of red flags that can be that can pop up, that can be possibly something to be concerned with, or at least should basically perk up your antennas that you need to look a little bit more into this. So one red flag is you come to a place and there's no frum person on site. There's no frum person on site, and that is definitely a red flag, because there's so many things that can happen in the kitchen, like we discussed. You want to have someone from on site, even if it's the owner, but at least someone from. If there's no one from on site, that is a red flag, and you need to right away ask or call the Hashgacha what's going on. It could be the Mashiach stepped out for 10 minutes to go down mincha or to go do something, but if you don't have anybody from on site, even if they tell you, yeah, the Mashiach just stepped out, he's coming back. If you really have no choice and that's where you want to eat, so wait and see, will he be coming back? Don't start ordering or don't start feeling comfortable until he comes back. And there are times that a consumer reached out to me and asked me, and they said, yeah, they said the Mashiach is going to come back. I said, wait, and the person waited about an hour, and Mashiach never showed up. And then they called Hashgacha, and the Hashgacha found out the Mashiach didn't show up that day, and the place was just saying the Mashiach is going to come back, and he wasn't going to come back. So there's no one from, it's an issue. And if it's the owner, sometimes the owner is busy and he had to step out, and they're relying on him to be the from person, and he doesn't come back, and you have nowhere else, and you want to eat there, and you're waiting and waiting. This is a reason to call the Hashgacha and say, listen, I'm here, there's no from person, and the Hashgacha will have to obviously check in with the owner, what's going on, where are you, and that's just something that you definitely wouldn't want to sit down and start getting comfortable if there is no from person at all on site. The next is if a mashgiach cannot answer basic questions like, to what is this Pas Yisrael, what shchitas we just mentioned. If he starts mumbling and fumbling, he doesn't know basic answers, that's as well as a red flag. Another thing that's a red flag is if you look at the menu and you see things which seem to be clearly an issue, like we gave the whole bug class, so that was the whole class for itself. Things that are clearly blacklisted, like asparagus or Brussels sprouts. Things that right away should call your attention: raspberries, blackberries. Even though you may have been told this is a good hashgacha or this Rav is reliable, suddenly you see these things. These are red flags, and they need to be addressed. It can't just be assumed like, oh, okay, it's fine. No, they need to be addressed, and you should not feel comfortable settling down until you get a clarity on how, what those things are. Maybe they're getting bodek, Brussels sprouts or asparagus, but you need to find out. You can't. You don't want to assume. Other things could be an expired certificate or certificate expired. It's not a huge red flag, but it's something usually, because if someone from the Hashgacha is visiting, which we said the person should be visiting from the Hashgacha at least once a week to oversee that everything is running smoothly, even if there's a mashgiach tmidi, better even twice a week. So they should have noticed the certificate. They should have done something about it. If it's already many months expired, that means many months have passed and no one took care of it. It could be signs of a hashgacha which is not functional. So that's something that's a little bit you right away want to ask, and the owner may say, no, we are under hashgacha. Call the hashgacha. So yeah, go ahead and call and see, are they actually still under hashgacha or not. This is more things that would be, if you, for whatever reason you can't reach out and find out if some hashgacha is a reliable hashgacha and you're faced with the situation. Some basic red flags would be if the place is open on Shabbos. The place is open on Shabbos. There may be heterim, but it's not acceptable mainstream heterim. They sell the place to a guy, but there could be so many questions involved. The moment you see a place is open on Shabbos, you know to stay away. It's not a recommended place. Many times it's very common for vegan, vegetarian places that get very weak hashgachas because some rabbanim out there take many leniencies and say, oh, it's only vegan, it's only vegetarian, what can go wrong? There's no meat, there's no this. When in truth, many things can go wrong. So it's that itself, that hashgacha may be giving many vegan places or many vegetarian places, is a red flag. This may sound silly, but sometimes a red flag is when a Rav signs his name on the certificate, he writes who his rabbis were or which yeshivas he went to, where he got smicha, which means he's trying to promote himself. Usually that is a red flag, because if someone has a good name and has been doing their hashgacha properly, they don't need to promote themselves by mentioning a whole bunch of other things that make them sound, all special. So that sometimes itself already is a red flag. This is in general. If you go to a city and there is a strong established local hashgacha, and this restaurant has a different hashgacha from another person or someone out of town, that's a red flag. Why don't you, if there's a local strong hashgacha, why are you going somewhere else? And that could be a question to ask. And they may say, we wanted something people are more familiar with, so we went with something more famous, like an OU or an OK. We didn't want smaller. But sometimes, or many times, it means that the local VAD doesn't want to deal with them, whether they messed up in the past and they don't want to work with them. So that many times is a red flag. If there's a local, established, reliable VAD or hashgacha, and they're getting from someone else, that's something already to raise a red flag. Other things could be tznius. If you walk in and you see that the waitresses or people behind the cashier are blatantly dressed in a way which is not tznius, that hashgacha generally should enforce a certain level of tznius. And that may not be something that has to be 100%, but generally that the basic areas should not be uncovered, and clothing should not be too tight and similar things like that. If something is very blatantly not appropriate, that could be a red flag that the hashgacha is not doing what they should be doing. If there is inappropriate non-Jewish music, allowed, and no one's taking care of that. Again, nothing doesn't specifically mean that there's something wrong with the kashrus, but generally hashgachas do want the environment to be kosher also. Assuming people that care about kashrus are eating there, generally people that care about kashrus also care about other aspects of halacha, and you wouldn't feel comfortable if there's not tznius or not appropriate music, and if the hashgacha is not enforcing that, there's a lack of sensitivity somewhere, and that could be a red flag as well. And something else could be that if you ate somewhere and you noticed something and you brought it up to the hashgacha, whatever, if it's something small, if it's something that the certificate's expired, or that you saw them using Parmesan cheese and nothing was mentioned to you, I don't know, whatever it may be, you have something to mention to the hashgacha, you mention it, and you come around next time and they did not fix it. Hashgacha, which is on top of the game, should be addressing these things. And even if they may officially have a good name, but if you come back and they did not address it, so okay, maybe you give it 1 or 2 times. At a certain point, they're showing themselves that for whatever reason they're not being on top of that situation. So that as well is something to be looking out for. One more quick thing. We did mention we're going to talk about traveling. So cruises, it's almost impossible, or to this day, I do not know of a cruise that has a good, reliable hashgacha. Many people say, what do you mean, Costa Rica or this? There's no cruises to this day that have a good, reliable hashgacha. The reason is because hashgachas don't want to give hashgacha on cruises. The cruises have a lot of inappropriate untznius atmosphere, and they do not want to give their certification on that anyway. So cruises, you have to really triple, quadruple check to really make sure that there is, because it's not in any way something which is done generally. And Pesach hotels as well, over 90% of Pesach hotels do not have a good hashgacha, and they may say, oh, non-gebrux, we peel everything, we do Chabad Menagim, we do this. They may say everything we take tomorrow, but there isn't a strong, reliable hashgacha. Stay away. There's disasters and catastrophes every single year, and over 90% of Pesach hotels do not. So that is something to be very aware of, especially when it comes to Pesach. And next class, we're going to be taking questions and addressing people's personal questions. So everyone should send in their questions. And I'm not sure what's the best email. I don't remember right now. But definitely we have Kashrus, Be in the Know. We have our website over there. Maybe you can submit questions through there, or you can reach out afterwards to the administrators to find out what's the best way to send questions. Someone just posted project chanapowerhour@gmail.com, so everyone can see that as a message. Project chanapowerhour@gmail.com, and we'll be briefly discussing as well simchas, when you're eating out of simcha, l'chaim, bris, wedding, what can go wrong there, and how to comfortably eat out at simchas as well. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Zibell. That was so clear, and those are some very important pointers. Thank you. Okay, so for our next class on Hilchos Shabbos, we are excited to continue our series on Amir L'Nachri, part 6, where we will be discussing non-Jewish help on Shabbos. Rabbi Braun is the Mayor D'Asra of Crown Heights, and we are very grateful to have him back with us on our program. Thank you so much for making time to be here tonight.
Okay. Thank you for that introduction. I'm very excited about this week's shir, and the reason is because this is the easier part of Amid al-Nachri, and it's a more interesting part of Amid al-Nachri. They usually go together. Usually that which is more interesting is usually easier too. So in the past we spoke about that the very Isser of Amid al-Nachri, the rules of the Isser, the oifen when it's us, when it's mutter. I want to talk this week about the exceptions for Amid al-Nachri. And there's a number of exceptions. And I'll start off with the background that there's a Gemara in Masechet Gittin where the Gemara says that there was a special dispensation to ask a goy to do malacha for us on Shabbos and write a document, a bill of sale on a property. Mishum mitzvah Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. There's a mitzvah of settling the land, the holy land of Eretz Yisrael. So therefore they allow the goy to prepare a document, a bill of sale, in order that otherwise the sale won't go through. There won't be the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. Now this is an exception to the rule. Because normally, even when we allow a goy to do malacha for us, we only let him do something which is asa d'Rabbanan. Writing is asa d'Oraisa. So a goy to go do a malacha of koisev, once you write 2 letters, it's mamayish. It's person is chayiv kara, skil, and chatat. But even if a person writes less than 2 letters, it's what we call a chatzi shir. It's not the full amount, but it's still asa min Torah. Person writing an entire document, the bill of sale, as mamayish asa d'Oraisa, one of the lamates malachas. So Tosfos and Gemara Gittin Tosfos says that indeed this is a special exception that was made for the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, and for any other mitzvah, they would never allow Amid al-Nachri to do a deraisa. And Tosfos brings many proofs from a Gemara about Milah, which we'll get to there soon. And that's indeed the basic principle that generally speaking, Amid al-Nachri is not mutter for Stam mitzvah. Although there is a machlokes rishonim about this. There's an opinion called the Baal HaItter, and I think this is important to know. The Baal HaItter says, no, if it comes from a mitzvah, any mitzvah in the world, you're allowed to ask a goy to do even a deraisa. Most places can disagree with him. Most places can say, no, Amid al-Nachri, when you're allowed to ask a goy to do for a mitzvah, the purpose of a mitzvah, that's only for a d'Rabbanan, but not a deraisa. You can't ask a goy to do a deraisa. So, and that's indeed what Alter Rebbe brings to Shulchan Aruch. You can ask a goy on Shabbos, even if you told him before Shabbos, you can't ask him to go do a malacha for you on Shabbos, even for the purpose of a mitzvah. If he's going to be doing the malacha after Shabbos, it's a whole different story. When he does the malacha after Shabbos, the only problem of me talking to the guy is that I'm talking in forbidden speech. There's no problem that the guy is working for me on Shabbos. If we remember the previous classes, Amid al-Nachri is about shlichus, so the guy is working for me is like my shliach. But when the guy is working for me on a Sunday, big deal. So I'm also allowed to work on a Sunday. The only aveda here was that I spoke about something not allowed to talk about. No, you're allowed to talk about mitzvahs on Shabbos. Even mitzvahs that involve malach, you're allowed to talk about. The pasuk says, for those who know, who make Kiddush Shabbos Day themselves, they might know this pasuk. I guess it's some advantage in husbands coming home late from ringen. You learn a bit of the Kiddush words. You're not allowed to be engaged in chafat secha, in your activities. But chefze shamayim, chefze mitzvah, you let him talk about mitzvah matters on Shabbos. So therefore, if I talk to the guy and tell him to do a malacha for a mitzvah after Shabbos, that's not a problem. But if I want the guy to do malacha on Shabbos, that's a problem. He's working for me. So for the Rabbana, when I'm asking to do something which is only forbidden with Rabbana, that's the rule. In the olden days, people didn't have electricity, and they would eat just by the candlelight. And a lot of people would go and ask goyim. They would have this thing. They would come to a goy. If the lights would turn, if the candles would extinguish, they would call the goy off the street and ask him to light candles for the meals. He's able to see by the meal because you can't eat in the dark. Now, the rabbis didn't protest about those people who had this minhag, because these people were relying on the minority view of the Baal HaItter that says that when it comes to a mitzvah, you can ask a guy even to do it, even lighting a candle. But first, let's put a few things in perspective. First of all, this minhag that people have adopted, which is not correct, but we're not protesting against, that minhag was when there was no candles whatsoever. If one candle is still burning, so it's not dark. So then there's definitely no head to go tell a guy to light a candle, because this is not such a mitzvah that you go because of that and push away the issur that Chazal made of Amin al-Nachri. If the guy lit on his own, it becomes a whole story. If you let a benefit from the extra candle, you're not let a benefit, and what happens after the first candle goes out? If you let a benefit from the second candle, that's okay. That's a whole different discussion. And since it involves Untitled Shabbos, there's a tatum for that. I don't want to talk about that right now. But I'm talking about the principle. There was this minute people did this. Often when I talk about Amil al-Nachri, people tell me, everybody does it. Well, you can't call a guy to turn on the light. Everybody does it. And I tell them, guess what? This everybody does it is not a new thing. The Alter Rebbe also brings that everybody does it. And he says it's wrong. So the Alter Rebbe says, everybody, although this is what a lot of people do, every person should be machmer for himself, even if he's sitting in the dark and he can't eat the Suda Shabbos, he should not ask a guy to turn on a candle. And the equivalent of that is to turn on a light. Turning on a light is the same device as turning on a candle. Because the main primary opinion, and that's the majority opinion, Rabu Ha'imim, that's the majority opinion, V'divreim Ikar, and that's the primary opinion, that a guy is not allowed to do for us, even b'makom mitzvah, we can't ask a guy to do a deraisa. The only head that we have is something called shvus de shvus. I want you to learn that term, shvus de shvus. It's an extremely important term. Bear with me a minute, please. The term shvus to shvus means a double rabbinic rule. It's a rabbinic rule of a rabbinic rule in Shabbos. Asking a guy to work for us on Shabbos is only rabbinically forbidden. Asking a guy to work for us on Shabbos and do something which is rabbinically forbidden for us is a rabbinic of a rabbinic rule. Shvus to shvus. And once it's a shvus to shvus, that's where things become so much easier. So there's a heter called shvus de shvus b'makom mitzvah. Having a guy doing something which is only d'Rabbanan for a mitzvah. But having a guy doing something which is asam and atayda for us, that's a problem. And therefore, even if it's a tzayda godly, there's a great need, it's mamish crazy dark. No, you're not allowed to do that. The Alter Rebbe, however, adds, Ein limches b'makilim. Don't protest against those that are lenient. But here he adds the following few words. Because a lot of people are aware of this Alter Rebbe, they don't know this conclusion. He says, the reason not to protest is because mutav shi shoygig v'aliyim mazidin. It's better that they should do it without knowing what as a shoygig, because if you're going to protest, they're still going to continue doing it, and then they'll be amazed. Then it'll be deliberate. So in other words, of course they're in the wrong. But we know the habit of people, like, yeah, you let it tell a guy, you tell them through a hint, whatever it is. So no, that's not permissible. I'm not talking when there's little kids involved and kids are sitting in the dark and they're scared. That's a whole different story. We'll talk about little kids. It's another separate share. So let me give you a few examples of this principle where we say we can't have a guy doing a malacha for us, even for a mitzvah. There's a chuppah. In the old days, chuppahs were on Fridays. It's cheaper, by the way, because chuppah is on Friday, and the first Shav Brachas, which was the primary Shav Brachas, was Friday night, which was also the chasna. You save a meal. That was the meaning in a lot of cities. Friday afternoon was the chuppah. And you have a guy that's playing instruments by the chuppah. Playing instruments, minor problem. The guy playing instruments on Shabbos, it's a gzeira midrabban. Chazal made a rule that you're not allowed to play instruments on Shabbos. Why? Because if you play instruments, you might end up, I'm not talking about electronic instruments, I'm talking about the old instruments. Shemi Yisak and Klei Shir. Maybe the guy will go sorry, not the guy. A Yid is not allowed to play an instrument because maybe he'll go and fix an instrument on Shabbos. Fixing an instrument is Issa Deraisa, Mesak and Mana, Tikkun Keli, Makabapatish, whichever name you want to call it. So a guy is playing with a violin, and one of the strands got cut. So the halach is you're not allowed to go tell the guy, hey, go fix the violin, because when he's going to fix it, he's going to be Issa Deraisa. And even just for simchas chasim mekala, God can't do a malacha deraisa for a mitzvah. A person finds chametz in his house on Pesach. So one of the ways of getting rid of chametz is, I'm not going to talk about burning right now, is to crumb it, break it into crumbs, and winnow it, throw it into the wind. Throwing it into the wind is one of the malachas of Shabbos Zoyda. So you can't ask the guy to crumble up and throw the chametz into the wind. A person doesn't have a shofar in Rosh Hashanah. I'm giving you the traditional examples. I know some of these are not some contemporary and modern. A person doesn't have a shofar in Rosh Hashanah, so you go to a guy, ask him to go make you a shofar. Well, depends what it involves. If a lot involves a malacha gemura making straight out of a horn a shofar, then a guy can't do that for you on Shabbos, and you won't hear shofar in Rosh Hashanah. Sorry, I'll rephrase it. Not Shabbos, Yom Tov, because Shabbos we don't blow shofar anyhow, right? This is Yom Tov. There's an exception to the rule, as we said before. If somebody buys a house or a field next to Stroll from a guy, you'll have to ask the guy to write a shtar mechira on Shabbos. If the guy is traveling and he's leaving on Shabbos, Chazal didn't want to put their rule of Amidul Anachri in the way of Yeshiva Yisrael. That was extremely important for them. So selling and buying is only Issa D'Rabbanan. We're talking about ksiva, writing. That's a deraisa, and we're going to let the guy even to write. Another example of a place where even a deraisa might be permissible. We know that the mitzvah of bris milah is so powerful that it pushes away Shabbos. We do a bris on Shabbos. If it's a milah bisman, if it's on time. But the halach is that only milah atzma doichel Shabbos, the bris is doichel Shabbos. Because the bris you can't do before Shabbos, because you're not allowed to do before the 8th day. But the machshira milah, all the preparatory work for the milah, that you can do on Friday. Fixing the knife, bringing the knife to the child, preparing the medicine for the child that you need to make for after the bris, all these kind of stuff, that you're not allowed to do it on Shabbos. And even if a person wasn't his fault, he didn't do it before Shabbos. He did it before Shabbos, and now he just can't do it anymore. It disappeared. I don't know what. All the medicine he prepared. Even the student Rabbanan, you now do it on Shabbos. And if it involves not doing the bris, you push off the bris. Chazal made hemidu chacham divreim afilu b'makom kares. Chazal's rules are so powerful. They put in the way even of a child missing out the 8th day bris, which is the issue of kares. So if you have to carry your knife on Shabbos in a place where there's no aid of chatzeres, there's no knife for the child. It's no knife. You need to carry the baby, so no bris. However, if we're talking about involving a guy now, so if we're talking about something which is only a drabanan, for sure there's no problem. Shvus de shvus b'makam mitzvah. I can ask a guy to do a drabanan for the mitzvah bris milah. If it's something which is a issa deraisa, fixing a knife is a issa deraisa. It's mesak and keli. So we need to sharpen the milah knife. It's bent out of shape, whatever it is. That's issa deraisa. Carrying in the proper shus rabim is also issa deraisa. So ordinarily we would say we can't ask a guy to do issa deraisa in the case of mitzvah. Says the Alter Rebbe that when it comes to the mitzvah of bris milah, there's room to be lenient. There's a machlokes about it when it comes to the mitzvah of bris milah. But since milah itself is doichel Shabbos, so we can rely on the lenient opinion with regard to machshire milah, the preparation acts for milah. If there's no other way to do it, we can rely on getting a guy to do it for us. So here we have a special exemption, besides for Yeshiva Yisrael, for not for milah, but for the preparation act for milah. You can even have a guy doing a deraisa, because since the milah itself is doichel Shabbos, sorry, it's a touch more lenient, and we allow a guy to do a deraisa pass on Shabbos. Having said that, so let's think about a practical thing. I have a child at home, and I want to bring him to shul. I want to do my bris in 770. Or for that matter, in any shul. So you're not going to carry on Shabbos. So I want to get a guy to carry him to shul. Seemingly that should be allowed. Because we said we're allowed to get goyim to do a deraisa for preparation acts of Mila, because Mila itself is Hilchos Shabbos. How much more so if it's in a place which is not a proper Rosh Hashanah? That's only in the Rabbana. For sure, I should be able to get a good to carry him to shul. Says the Alter Rebbe, no. That although there's room to argue like that, there are those that argue like that indeed, but there are many opinions that say, no, you can't have a guy carried from your house to shul through a guy. It's not a mitzvah. You don't have to do the bris in shul. You can technically do the bris at home. And that's why the minig is today that we do bris milas on Shabbos at home. Those that say you're allowed to, their argument is, no, there's a mitzvah doing it in a shul because B'Reiva Mahadris Melech. There's more people by the mitzvah, so that's part of enhancing the mitzvah. The meaning is like the opinion that says you're not allowed to because enhancement of the mitzvah is not a mitzvah. You can equally do the mitzvah at home. We're not going to let the guy to carry the baby to shul. What we do allow is, as we mentioned, shvus to shvus. Anything which was not a malachim and a Torah, only rabbinically forbidden. That's where there are exceptions to Amidul Nachri for a mitzvah, for a great loss. So Chazal didn't apply the whole severity of Amidul Nachri, which is only a rabbinic rule, in something which to begin with is not a malacha deraisa. But even so, even when it's a shvus to shvus, it's not a blanket rule. Only specific mitzvahs, and based on the guidelines that Chazal tell us, and you can't learn from one case to another, you have to know the rules. Number one. Number two, even when it comes to a mitzvah, and asking the guy to do only the Rabbanan, that's after the fact. You can't set up your system on Friday and say, oh, on Shabbos, of course, we could do Amidul Nachri. It's a mitzvah, shvus to shvus. You can't set yourself up in that system. You stuck on Shabbos, and you're faced with a problem over here. Okay, let's get a guy. So let me give you a couple of examples of shvus to shvus b'makom mitzvah. I can go to a guy and tell him, again, I'm giving you the traditional examples. These are not such contemporary examples, but you understand the principles. There's a shofar stuck on a tree, on a Shoshana. Climbing on top of a tree is a drabana. I could tell the guy, go up on the tree, bring me down the shofar, please. If it would involve the Issa Daraisa, no shofar. It's a drabana, okay, drabana for a mitzvah. Erev Pesach Shechalit b'Shabbos, that's going to be relevant this year. This year, Mitzvah Shem Erev Pesach is going to be on Shabbos. Get ready. So you have stuck crumbs of chametz, because we have this whole problem. We have to eat a Suda Shabbos in the morning, you have chametz crumbs. Now I want to give it to a guy. Simple solution. Have a guy comes to my house, he takes all my chametz, and then have all these trials how you deal with the chametz leftovers. Simple. Depends what the guy is going to do. If the guy is going to carry in the Rosh Hashanah, it's a deraisa. Even though it's for a mitzvah, I just don't want to have chametz in my house on Pesach. Sounds like a reasonable mitzvah. So if he's carrying Rosh Hashanah, no. If he's going to carry it to a carmelist in a place which is not a real Rosh Hashanah, I'm allowed to give it to him, and I'm allowed to tell him, take it out, take it where you want, dump it in the garbage, do whatever you want with it. If I find chametz in my house on Pesach, so I could tell the guy to dump it into the bathroom. What's the problem with me taking the chametz and putting it to the bathroom? It's muktzah. Muktzah, chametz on Pesach is muktzah. Dump it in the river. That's all muktzah stuff. If it's a muktzah, it's only the Rabbanan, no problem. I can tell him to do it on Yom Tov, I can tell him on Shabbos, as long as he's not carrying in a place they're not allowed to carry, even a Torah. A very, very practical case. A lady has to go to mikvah on Shabbos, and it's her mikvah night. It's her mikvah night on Shabbos. Went down to my paperwork here. I'm missing the paper over here. Okay, I'll say it without my papers. A lady has to go to mikvah on Shabbos, and she forgot to cut her nails. Problem. What do? Cutting nails is a deraisa. So there is a heter that says maybe cutting nails is not a deraisa on Shabbos. Why? Because one of the conditions of malachas min ha-Torah is that in order for something to be asam ha-Torah, you need to have an intention. It has to be a purposeful act. Malachas shetzricha legufa. When I'm cutting nails, I don't need the nails. I want to get rid of nails. So arguably, maybe cutting nails might not be over on the malacha deraisa of geizes because I don't need the nails. I want to get rid of the nails. Halacha, we don't rely on that. We can't have a guy cut the nails unless we ask the guy to do a shinui. very, very unpractical what I'm about to say. We tell the guy, with your teeth, can you cut off my nails? Do you use your hands to cut my nails? The Alter Rebbe says that you let it do. I saw someone making a mistake. A guy who wrote a sefer, actually, true story. He made a mistake and he wrote that the Alter Rebbe says you can get two people to cut the nails because he read the word bishinayim, which means teeth, as bishnayim too. He just read the word wrong. That's a case where there's something which is a Issa d'Rabbanan, because cutting nails with a person's hands and with a nail clipper with a knife, that's a deraisa. Cutting nails with hands or with teeth is a d'Rabbanan. The fact that the woman is moving the nail, that's called misayeya. Misayeya is not mamash. Isra Chazal allowed you to do what we call misayeya. And I'll finish with one more example. Last example for the shir. There is a special principle that bein hashmashas, during that time between Shkia and nightfall, your ladder has going to do even a deraisa. And that's usually the time when you realize at home, oish, we forgot to turn off the light, we forgot to do this, we forgot to do that. Right after Shkia, all of a sudden you remember. That's the best time to go out and get a guy to do those things for you. Because again, if it's a tzedek mitzvah or one of the other principles, tzedek gadol, have some merubah, we'll talk about those principles next week. So let me give you a case of a tzedek mitzvah. A woman forgot to light candles on Shabbos. Now on Friday. Definitely a mitzvah. So if it's already nightfall, you didn't light candles, nothing to do about it. If it's after Shkia, in a period of time called bein hashmashas, call a guy and have the guy light one candle only. There's no mitzvah doing more than one. That's extra. One candle. Even today's day and age when we have electricity, the one candle is okay. You can ask a guy to light it. There's even a special bracha that you make. You can make a bracha on the lighting candles because the mitzvah is not the act of lighting. If the mitzvah would be the act of lighting, I can't get a guy to do it. The mitzvah is the benefit from the light, which is why when we make a bracha on candles, we cover our eyes. So right after the bracha, we take off the handle of our eyes and we have benefits. So we made the bracha on the benefit of the candles. So the guy lights the candle and we're having now benefits. So we can make a bracha. The Alter Rebbe suggests we shouldn't say lahadlik nershel Shabbos kodesh. We should say al hadlakas nershel Shabbos kodesh because we're not actually lighting it. That's a special had to ask the guy to do a deraisa for a mitzvah, bein hashmashas, but only one candle. Good nacht.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Braun. That was fascinating and very clear. Thank you. Okay, so for our next topic, we will be concluding our series on Kisui Rosh, hair covering. We will be hearing from Mrs. Faigy Yusewitz, and then we will have some special video clips that we will get to see. We are very grateful to have Mrs. Faigy Yusewitz as part of our program. She is a certified mikvah.org college teacher as well as a longtime educator. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Okay. Yasher Kayak, I think it's super special. Again, women coming out again and again and again to learn together. And so now that we really learned through the whole topic, I want to take this opportunity to just answer a question that came in. And together we'll have the privilege of actually watching the Rebbe speak on this topic and hearing some firsthand accounts. And thank you, Jem, for giving us the permission to share their footage. It's beautiful and always incredible to hear it in the Rebbe's own words. So to just quickly answer a question, someone had asked, I quoted a letter of the Rebbe, I'll re-quote it, and I'll tell you the date of this letter so you can go ahead and look it up if you look, because we got some requests in for that one. So the Rebbe writes that I'm pleased to receive your letter from the 3rd of November. You write the good news that you ordered a shaitel during your recent visit to New York. The Rebbe says Hashem will surely fulfill his promise that gets written in the Holy Zohar. And Hatzlacha to you and your husband in good health and prosperity, especially in your case, where in addition to the deed itself, there's also Kiddush Hashem. The Rebbe says, I'm sure you'll wear it with joy, like the Baal Shem Tov emphasized the importance of doing all mitzvahs with joy, and Hashem's brachos will be even greater. And then the Rebbe went on, and this is what we were asked about. The Rebbe says, I want to add my prayerful wishes that Hashem give you the schos to be instrumental in making your friends and acquaintances follow your good example. And not only does the shaitel show the true Jewish spirit, but it also shows strength of character and the will and power of conviction, not being swayed by external influences and the opinions of other people, etc., etc. So this letter is from Yotes Cheshvan, Tafshin Tesvav. That's the 19th of Cheshvan, 5715. And you can go ahead and look it up in its source. Another public service announcement that was brought to my attention, and I wanted to share for everybody's benefit, if you are considering to purchase a new sheitel. So we discussed the areas on the head that need to be covered. And one of them that's really tricky now, especially with the lace sheitels, is the here in front of the ears. And it was brought to my attention that actually if you request of your sheitel macher when you're purchasing a sheitel, there are two different ways that they can make it a lot easier to keep that hair covered with your sheitel. One is you can request that they put in what's called ear tabs. You need to ask for this before you purchase it. Sometimes there's an additional expense, but if we're buying a sheitel to keep our hair covered, it's an expense that's well worth it. It might be $150 or something like that. And they actually would make like the good old-fashioned sheitels used to come with. Sorry about that. My phone kicked me out. Another option, because ear tabs don't work for everybody, depending on like if you have glasses or I don't know, different factors. Another option is to request of the sheitel make it much easier to keep that area sufficiently covered. If you're going to like tuck it down, like if there's not a lot of hair over here, it's going to be like much harder to work with. So those are just some simple things that could
we
really
didn't
make
hear
difference.
you well. Can you
What?
we didn't hear you well. Can you please repeat the second option?
Okay. The second option is to ask the sheitel macher to add extra wefts of hair in this area. So either they can sew it into the lace, because typically the lace lining comes kind of all the way to around the front, and different sheitel machers finish the sheitels differently, but they can add an extra hair, again, either in the lace or in the sheitel itself. And obviously having more hair over here is going to make it much easier to work with when you're kind of like putting that hair into place to make sure that the hair underneath stays covered. Because some sheitels kind of just have less hair in this area. And if you're wearing a sheitel forward, theoretically it wouldn't bother you, but just having loose hair over here is not enough to make sure that those payas are covered. So having extra hair in that area would make it easier to cover properly. And those are things you can ask for, and it's not a big deal. So I'm happy to share that. I also want to share, and then we're going to turn on the videos of the Rebbe, this book that was recently, whoop, it's coming through blurry. How come? Oh, now you can see it. Okay. Covered in Blessings. This book was recently put out by Simchas in English. I mean, it's not so recent, but it's phenomenal. And if you want to learn more about the Rebbe's perspective on this incredible mitzvah of Kisui Rosh and the Rebbe's encouragement to specifically do this mitzvah with a sheitel and with enormous joy and see the brachas that the Rebbe tells us will come through doing this mitzvah properly, great book. It's a really thin one. If you can see in this video here, it's tiny, but it's a really, really nice one, and I highly recommend. All right, let's watch the Rebbe's words. Thank you to Jem for giving permission.
Gleich wie ein Kind wird geboren, die schöne Gehe, was sie die Eltern fühlen sich mit ihr. Noch mehr sind die Gehe, was sie die Eltern fühlen sich nein gedoschen, jeder geboren. Und das sind die Gehe der Kind und Kindes und der Kindskinder Art seit Kollateral. Und bisher der Kind wird am Ziel befniatzno. Berege Shiotzel Lavi Loelom is a viele, wenn hat nicht noch nicht gesichert begollen. Aber wenn man Muschpa von der Anhoge, von der Vater, von der Mutter, sagt er Semes. A neise du was verstandig mit Pastus. Als in der Gehe, was für Achille und Stimme gibt. Und das wird dann, was gibt, sorry, dazu darf nicht ankommen zu den Mosen wie die Mutti. Das ist verstandig in Sechel Apostel. Als wird dann, was gibt, sorry, ist ein Abgemine, von wo das wird sein, was gibt, sorry. Also es ist koscher und koscher, wie sie darf zu sein, koscher für ein jüdisch Kind. Sagt mir noch mehr, und das wie der Mutter und der Vater fühlen sich, die Mami und die Masse von ein bisschen Kind, hat das eine firme Wirkung. Und als Lei, Rose, Sar, Keiles, Besi, Sares, Reishi, wie Kimchis hat gesagt, hat das so getan, als er gehabt 7 Kinder im Gedächtnis. Kein Gordel darf sein noch beim Mitzvah, darf sein noch 20 und darf sein am Wugel und darf sein Gadle, a Gordel, kein a Gordel mehr. Sag mal, das, was geworden als a Gordel, a kein Gordel, ist das Gewinn verbunden damit, was Lei, Rose, Keiles, Basis, alles recht. Nicht a Fremder hat mich gesehen. Keiles, Basis. Keine nicht gewähne, wo ich tu. So aber gewähne der Ewigste dort. Nicht den ewigsten Stehler. Nicht den ewigsten Zniers. Hat es gewirrt, dass wir an Hoge, ist ihr Kind in 20 Jahren oder noch mehr. Jachri sehr hat der Fall geworden, kein Gott. Du wolltest erzählt, dass dänische Balper meinte habe. Ich werde eine jüdische Frau, ein Gräßen Kimchis, ein Gräßen Tadeke, der Chule. So aber geworden ein Chedek von Teile Miloschen Hero und Teile Miloschen von der Mine von Teile Eid. Das war leicht der Weg für eine jüdische Mutter, für eine jüdische Frau, für eine jüdische Mädel, a Zeit Koladenis. Aber das war sie vielfach. Weil sie gewinnt sich mehr nicht wie sie und keines besser. Selbstverständlich der Ewigste. Das darf mir nicht maßbar sein. Aber ich schätze mehr nicht wie sie und keines besser. Ich wusste, dass in der Gehe, der Dick, wachule, der Zell, Teiles, Chai, wie Roh, Bachai, ma viel das in der Gehe. Nicht nur sie, was Herrgel nasse Tever. Aber tut das, wenn keiner in ein Zimmer, dann noch kommen sich nicht einhalten, oder mit vergessen, und man tut das, wenn noch jemand da. Dann noch tut man das in Hay, dann noch tut man das in Gas. Warum ist die geworden ein Herkel, dann merkt es gar. Sagt Teile noch mehr. Als sie dann noch das nicht geht, zu Kindern, und wenn wir legen, zu Kindskindern. Verstandig, als geworden, kein Gott, jeder Rasun, I demot der Dienen, kuhuna gdelat, bnei kedim lechol shara keim. Eber konner sein, am allem keim.
So to be super clear, at the very beginning of the video, we didn't see the subtitles, but the Rebbe was saying that the parent's behavior doesn't only affect the child from the moment of the child's birth, but rather the child is affected by the parent's behavior 9 months before the child was born. And then there goes on to discuss the power of Kimchas and the effect she had on her children. And obviously, like we discussed, I think we mentioned this in a previous class, a Kayin Gadol, it wasn't only a bracha baruchnias, this was a bracha begashmias as well. because for someone to be a Kohen Gadol, he had to be healthy, he had to be wealthy, he had to be married, and this bracha took effect. He needed to be at least 20 years old. So we're talking about a huge bracha. It was ruchnius, it was gashmias, and there was spells out in the video that even if and in other sikhs as well, that even if someone says, but I don't need my child to be a Kohen Gadol, or we're not even Kohanim, or what do you even mean? There says a Kohen Gadol was able to enter the Kodesh HaKodashim, and the bracha that it means for our children is not only in the Gashmias side, which we all want for our kids, it's also on the Ruchnias, that child should be able to be in the Kodesh HaKodashim was a place. What was unique there is that the Arin was there, and in the Arin were the luchais, and on the luchais the Aseres HaDibros were engraved. And what's unique about engraving, as opposed to Sefer Torah, which is written, is that the letters can never get erased. They might be filled with something, but they can never get erased. But we're talking about giving our children a gift that Torah should be engraved in their hearts. And that's something that we would do anything for as parents. And that's the gift that a mother has the power to give to her children. Okay, let's see some of the stories that Jen has shared.
Mrs. Chana Arnold is a veteran educator living in Los Angeles, California. In 1960, while living in Israel, she became engaged to Rabbi Yitzhak Arnold.
He asked me to get married, and he said that the Rebbe is very makpid on a sheitel. And I said to him, I'm not wearing a sheitel. None of my friends are wearing a sheitel. I'm embarrassed. It's going to be, everybody's going to make fun of me. I told him, you know what? I'll write to the Rebbe a letter with all my reasons and all my telling him why I do not. And I promise I'll cover my hair, and you'll see the Rebbe will go with me. And I'll do exactly what the Rebbe wants me to do. Well, I guess I did what the Rebbe wanted me to do. I got a letter from the Rebbe, and the Rebbe really talks about putting on a sheitel and how important it is. And even now, at those days, I mean, that's 50 years ago. Even those days when the youth in the United States are going higher in their commitments to Yiddishkeit, so there you see a lot of his oirus there also about the sheitel. And how is it possible that you're embarrassed of people and not of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, Melech Malchem Lachem Kadosh Baruch Hu? And that line was a clincher. The next day, I went to order sheitel. As a matter of fact, I got the letter in the middle of the night. My father worked in the censor in the post office, and all the letters that came from the United States went through him, that certain shipments. And he saw it says a letter for me. He didn't even know I wrote to the Rebbe. So he woke me up in the middle of the night when he came from the shift. I think it was like 3:30, and he told me, "Go wash Wasser. There is something for you." And I still remember that day, how I was shaking reading that letter. But I promised that I'm going to listen to what the Rebbe says. I did. In the letter, the Rebbe quotes the Zohar, that the brachas of wearing a sheitel is, there's a lot of brachas in it, and he finishes with a sentence, Misbarchim bevanim bivnei banim, that you are blessed with children and children's children. I was married already for over 6 years, and I did not have any children. I did not become pregnant yet. And I was listening to the Rebbe. I was in constant correspondence with the Rebbe, and at one point I asked to go for Yechidus for my Yom Holedes, and usually they don't let you go in. So I wrote to the Rebbe a letter, and I got permission to go in for Yechidus. And I took with me the letter, and I told, and I don't know till today, my father always was amazed. Where did you get that chutzpah? I swung the letter in front of the Rebbe, and I said, Rebbe, I have a promise, shachor al gabi levan, black and white, that I'm going to be blessed with children. And I did my part. and I want the Rebbe to give me a bracha. I should be, that in Yirtzeh Hashem, I should have children. And the Rebbe smiled at me. He saw how nervous I was. I'm more nervous than what I am now. And he said to me, sollt nicht sagen, im Yirtzeh Hashem, weil der Eibishter will. Sollt sagen, be'ezrat Hashem, weil der Eibishter will und der Eibishter wird helfen. Those were the words. I don't remember how I was able to do this, because even today I shake when I think about that Yechidus. It was quite chutzpahdik, but I was always told, as midaf monen, you have to ask. And I did. Baruch Hashem, I have 8 children. I'm a grandmother of 19, excuse me. I had 2 new ones this year. 19 grandchildren, and Baruch Hashem, and we follow the Rebbe's way.
Gleich ja Kind wird geboren. Ich
After her engagement in 1953, Chana Sharfstein had an audience with the Rebbe.
He asked me if I was planning to wear a sheitel, and I was very, very honest. I was raised to be totally honest, so without thinking of how I should answer it diplomatically or in any kind of way, I just said exactly what I felt like saying, because it was a very open, honest relationship. And I said, no, I'm not planning to wear a sheitel. You know what? The Rebbe did not get annoyed. He didn't get upset. He didn't get flustered or anything. He just looked at me with a big smile on his face, and he said, "Farwas nit? Why don't you want to?" And I said to him, well, I'm living in Boston. All of my friends are college students, college graduates. None of my friends are planning to wear a sheitel. They're all nice frum girls from nice frum homes. I have a very, very nice group of friends. And nobody wears a sheitel anyway. Only old people do. And I have no intentions of wearing a sheitel. That's not anything that I'd ever thought about. So the Rebbe said, are you going to keep your hair covered? And I said, oh yeah, I'm going to wear hats. Everybody in Boston wears hats, and I'm going to wear hats. So the Rebbe said, okay. And that was the end of that. And then I got married, and then I got married Rosh Chodesh Elul, and Rosh Chodesh Elul the following year, I had just found out that I was pregnant. And I had been living in Crown Heights. I moved to Crown Heights when I got married. And I saw a lot of people in the community were wearing sheitel, and they looked really not bad with it. So I was kind of thinking that maybe it's not a bad idea to have a sheitel. But it was just in the back of my mind. It wasn't anything I was really seriously thinking about. And then all of a sudden a letter came, and it was from 770. It wasn't uncommon to get letters from the Rebbe. He sent us letters all the time for Rosh Hashanah greetings and anything important that was going on. It was always addressed to my husband and myself. But this letter was just addressed to Mrs. Chana Sharfstein. And I'm like, why is the Rebbe sending me a letter? I haven't asked him anything. I haven't discussed anything with him. Why is he contacting me altogether? And I opened up the letter, and it was a whole page of this onion type paper. Remember, they had years back, typing paper. It was onion skin paper. It was a very thin paper. It was typed. The entire letter was typed. And on the bottom, the Rebbe had signed it. So the whole letter started out with this is Aseret Yemei HaTeshuvah, the 10 days of repentance between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, when you rethink your life, you rethink where you have been, where you're going, and what your plans are for the future. It's a very important time of the year. And then the Rebbe continued that he wants to institute in Chabad, among the women of Chabad, something that hadn't really been instituted before for a variety of reasons, and that's the idea of wearing a sheitel. And he wants every single woman in the Chabad community to wear a sheitel, and he underlined without an exception. And then he said something to the effect that he felt that I could be a leader among the women and I could influence people, and he wanted me to very seriously consider the importance of wearing a sheitel. And then the mind-blowing part, he put down every argument that I had said why I didn't want to wear a sheitel, brought it all back to the forefront. So he said the fact that your friends are not planning to wear a sheitel, that should not make you feel that you shouldn't wear one. You can be the one to be the leader and show them the way. The fact that you say that you would be uncomfortable with it, and you wear a sheitel and you walk down the street and you carry yourself high and you feel proud to let the world know that you're a Jewish woman and you're proud of being a Jewish woman, and therefore you're wearing a sheitel and you wear it with happiness. And he cut through every argument that I had given, and he ended it up by saying that he hoped that I would have a good year and so on and so forth. So after I read the letter, I said to my husband, you know what, I was thinking of wearing a sheitel anyway. So since this seems to be of such great importance to the Rebbe, and in those days, he went to 770 every day to daven mincha and Mariv daven with the Rebbe. That was like part of the schedule of the day. I said to my husband, when you go up today to daven, why don't you just take a little note and say that I'll write a note to say that I've decided to wear a sheitel and take it with you and give it into the Rebbe. And he said, okay. The next day, my husband came home from 770 and he said, you can't believe what happened. This is incredible what happened. I can't wait to share it with you. And I'm like, I hadn't heard anything happening in the community, so I didn't know anything exciting that was going on. And he takes out a check and he says, look, this is what I received in 770. This is from the Rebbe. The Rebbe had handwritten a check for me for a large amount of money. And with it was a message that I should go and get the most beautiful sheitel that I could get, and I should wear it with happiness and joy.
I would dare to say that some of the pressures that we had then are kind of around again today about wearing our sheitels properly and making sure that all the hair is covered, including, the ears and getting our linings in and everything like that. But all the Rebbe's brachos are truer than ever. So we should be zeicha to do this mitzvah with enormous joy, with lots of simcha, and we should be able to see all those brachos in a revealed way. Thank you so much for the opportunity to learn together.
Wow, thanks so much, Mrs. Yusewitz. We really appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to finish off with some Tehillim and a Mashiach thought. And just briefly before we do that, if you are enjoying these classes, please consider partnering with us to keep them going. We really appreciate all contributions of any amount. So you can log on to mikvah.org/donate and select Project on a Power Hour. Thank you so much. All right, so we're going to go ahead with Tehillim, starting with the Rabbis Kapitel, Chaf Gimel. And we will say that together. Shir Hamales Elacha Nasasi is Einai Hayeshvi Bashamayim Hine Chaini Avadam Al Yad Adonayim Keini Shivcha Al Yad Grita Kein Inenu El Adonai Elihinu Ad Sheychanenu Chaninu Adonai Chaninu Kirav Savanu Vuz Rabas Savula Nafshenu Halag Ashananam Habuz Lek'e Yainim. Okay, and then we will continue and we'll say Kapitel Chaf, having in mind, of course, all of our fellow Klal Yisrael, especially in Eretz Yisrael. Lamatayach Mizmer David Yancha Dene V'Yamtzari Sakab Hashem Lehe Yaakov Yeshlach Azrecha Mikaydesh Umitziani Sadaka Yizkar Kol Menchasecha V'Ilas Chaydash Nesela Yitin Lecha Bavecha V'Chalatascha Yamale Niranana B'Shua Secha B'Shem Elehinu Nidgal Yamale Adonai Kol Mishal Secha Ati Yitaiti Ki Yashir Adonai Mashiach Yaneu Mishmekache B'Gvuras Yisha Yaminai Ila V'Rechav Ve'ila Basasim V'Anachnu B'Shem Adonai Elehinu Naskar Him Akar V'Nafalo V'Anachnu Kamnu V'Nisaydat Adonai Yashir Malach Yaneu V'Yamkar Inu. Okay, and it wouldn't be the same if we didn't give some tzedakah. So make sure to give some tzedakah. And lastly, a Mashiach, almost lastly, a Mashiach thought, and this is from Shmais Tafshin and Aleph, where the Rebbe says that even though Yidden have been in Galus for way too long, 2,000 years, a Yid essentially, in his essence, is he's actually above Galus. And every single moment that a Yid finds themselves in Galus is totally against their nature. It's like it's a chiddush, basically. But at every moment, we are filled with the trust and the faith that Hashem's promise of the Gula will be fulfilled in the very near future. Amen, may it be so. Okay, and lastly, some quick reminders. If you appreciate the classes, again, share them with friends and family. The playbacks are available on mikvah.org/power hour, and you can also find them on podcast platform. You can just search Project Chana Power Hour. And if you have questions on the classes or anything that you've learned here, or you want a dedicated week of learning in honor of someone or Leila Nishma someone, you could reach out to us via email, projectchanapowerhour@gmail.com. And lastly, Amir Hashem, I'll see you next week, and may our learning prepare us in our homes for Mashiach and bring us all home to Eretz Yisrael. Have a